You don't have a choice.
Oh, I heard that, yeah.
Emphasize the word trash.
Thing like this, we have to argue certain things. And they have to go through most of what is going on. One year, we City Hall sent about it. And the kids got to come out there and they got to argue this point. The parents got to roll out now. And it was like 3 years. And she was like, yeah. They did a good job, granted. For now, I think it's just, it wasn't as good. It wasn't as good.
Call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
All right, and if we could call roll.
Vice-Chair Branconi,
Present.
Committee Member Brennan,
President.
Youth Member Montgomery Hale,
Present.
Committee Member Wyrick,
Present.
Committee Member Coster,
Present.
and Chair Lobsinger is absent at this point, and Committee Member DeMenno is absent.
Thank you. All right, so the first order would be approval of the agenda. Are there any changes from the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any comment from the public regarding the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve.
Aye.
Second.
Second.
Can we roll call for that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Vice-Chair Branconi,
Aye.
Committee Member Brennan,
Aye.
Committee Member Wyrick,
Aye.
Committee Member Coster,
Aye.
and that's it. It passed unanimously.
Okay, I have to read a statement regarding public comment. To prevent disruptions from individuals making comments not pertaining to city business, the City of Sonoma has temporarily suspended public comment via Zoom for all its meetings. Individuals who wish to provide public comments can do so by attending the meeting in person at the City Council chambers where the meeting is taking place, or by submitting a written comment via email to publiccomment@sonomacity.org, or by using the public portal available on the city's website. For more information, please contact City Clerk Rebecca Barr. All right, so for public comment, at this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended you keep your comments to 3 minutes or under. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Traffic Safety Committee at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at that time for committee consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chair, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda tonight? All right.
Member Branconi, thank you for getting this meeting started. My apologies for being late. Traffic was tough getting home from the city today. All right, Mark got it rolling. Let's just keep going here. It looks like we're at the consent calendar for our committee, and we will receive the minutes of the regular meeting from November 7th from 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Oh, we did that already. Oh,
That was the agenda.
no, that was the
No,
agenda.
we-
Yeah.
See what you got?
All motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
I second the motion.
Okay, Vice Chair Branconi,
Aye.
Committee Member Brennan,
Aye.
Committee Member Committee Member Wyrick,
Aye.
Committee Member Coster,
Aye.
and Chair Lobsinger.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right. All right. Looks like we're moving on to. Going to move to the regular calendar. And this would be the discussion on the current status of traffic hazard reports received by the Public Works Department the procedure for reporting the concerns and metrics utilized for evaluating them. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Berger.
Thank you, and I recommend to the committee that we go through these items one by one. We've got 4 different traffic hazard reporting forms we're talking about tonight. We're going to discuss, and it would be nice to be able to do public comment for each one, and then have our discussion, etc., after staff reports out on the item.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Just so we're all on the same page, we're not going through each item and then starting over again. As we hit each item, we'll go with Director Berger and then open up to public comment, then move on to the next item. It seems so we're all on the same page, and things seem to be moving a little bit faster that way. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. And yes, let's please proceed that way.
Yeah, definitely. And tonight, the City of Sonoma Public Works Department is going to go over a lot of the different traffic hazards that are on the log that we manage and have been submitted to the department. In this log, Public Works tracks when the report was received, who submitted it, and how the traffic safety hazard was evaluated and the resulting actions, traffic calming measures put in place as a result. Public Works has received the following active traffic hazard reports from citizens that we will be discussing tonight. The first one is MacArthur Lane at 2nd Street East and East MacArthur Street, Donner Avenue, that area. Overflow parking. And Kath, are you bringing this up on the agenda? Or are you going to scroll through as we go?
Oh,
The agenda item. Yeah, no, that'd be great if you could just put that up, because there's a couple of graphics in there that I want to bring people's attention to. Thank you. Some of the bullets on that an item are overflow parking in the neighborhood, noise and congestion, cars parked in the red zone, blocking driveways, students congregate at the cars, blast music, drive unsafely, smoking at Nathanson Preserve before and after school and after lunch. The second location we'll be going over tonight is West Main Street, from 1st Street West to 5th Street West, and the primary concern is speeding. The third one we'll be going over tonight is 5th Street West, from West Main Street to Verano Avenue. The primary concern is speeding. The fourth one that we'll be going over tonight is East MacArthur Street, Donner to 4th Street East, and the primary concerns being speeding, difficulty safely crossing the street with parked cars along East MacArthur Street. So on the next page of the agenda tonight, there is a report, traffic hazard report that was filed by Judith Alex. She's here tonight. And I'm sure that some of her neighbors are here also. And to just go through the report and hit the highlights, parking for the athletic field activities is one of the items that the traffic hazard reporting form discusses. There's also a graphic map of Google Earth that shows the 4 streets that I just brought up. Kath just brought it up for us. Thank you. And then student, yeah, it'll be there in just a second. Student drop-off and pickup is an issue. Students parking on MacArthur Lane during school days has been cited. Parents parked in the neighborhood waiting to pick up the kids after school. Parking, this one I believe is on. Parking in the red zone, creating a hazard on a blind corner on an already narrow street. Parents for youth sports leagues on weekday afternoons and weekends turn the streets into a parking lot at times. Cars routinely parked facing the wrong direction. Football game attendees parking on our street. And potential solutions that were cited in the report: turn 2nd Street East, Donner Avenue, and MacArthur Lane into 3-hour parking zone permit only. Residents get permits to display for exception, starting with a warning system so the students have notice that their cars will be towed next time. For high school sports and youth sports leagues using the fields, request all participants to park in the parking lot of the high school. For home football game nights, have a work study program for students to man barriers at 2nd Street East, at MacArthur Street East, also Donner Avenue at MacArthur Street East to control access to residents only. Enforce no pickup or drop off at pathway entrance on 2nd Street East and MacArthur Lane. This particular issue has been in the queue of Public Works for some time. This was brought to our attention back in August 2023. And the police department has been actively working with the neighbors to try to, number one, alleviate some of the issues, and number two, identify the issues. And there's been a real collaborative effort with the police department, sheriffs, and also the police department has been working with Sonoma Valley Unified School District on this particular problem extensively. On Tuesday, January 23rd, Public Works, the police department, and planning conducted a neighbor meeting that was very well attended and had a really collaborative atmosphere with a lot of people working together trying to solve a problem. Now, a lot of the issues that were just discussed were brought up at the meeting, and also some of the positive effects that the police department and the sheriffs working out in the neighborhood have had since the PD and Public Works got involved. And you might ask, well, why was planning there? Well, Community Development Director was there, attended the meeting, and she heads up a lot of the Muni Code modifications that we make. And if we make changes to parking in this neighborhood to the Muni Code, she may get involved, and that's why planning was there. So realistically, this is three separate departments, Public Works, PD, and Planning, Community Development, working on trying to come up with solutions to see if there's something that can be done to alleviate this problem. Here again, the police department has made a lot of positive progress. I don't want to put a lot of words. I believe that we have a lot of people here tonight to talk about the problem. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to the chair. The police department is here tonight. Unfortunately, Brandon Cutting could not make it. And Mike Pierre, who was also attended a lot of those meetings, was supposed to be his backup. He had a family emergency and is not able to attend the meeting either. We have a representative from the sheriff's office here tonight that can answer questions. However, he did not attend any of those early on meetings, and there was quite a few of them with the sheriff's department and the neighbors. And so with that, I'm just going to turn it back to the chair to see if you have any questions for staff. And if not, we could hear from some of the neighbors.
Thank you, Director Berger. My first question will be to the deputy. I'm sorry, I can't see your name over there. Did you have anything that you wanted to present, or if you don't have anything pre-planned, that's totally okay. I'm just checking with you first. Yeah. Okay, excellent. I don't have much to say. I've had conversations with Chief Cutting. I met with him last week, and I can just say from our conversations, I know he's out there. He's speaking with the community. I know he's working with the school. As we know, staffing is an issue across the board in a lot of public service departments. With the recent addition of the new school resource officer, that actually frees up some people during the day, which has been a good thing, and he does have parking enforcement. Now, I know that's just one aspect of this. This is a multi-pronged, issue. But those are just some of the things in a conversation I had with Chief Cutting. I know that he and the department are working on this and are working on creative solutions. That's the only thing I have, and I'll open up to the committee if anybody has anything to add for right now.
Just a quick question, Jen. Obviously, the school's got to have some, in my perspective as a citizen, more than anything else, is the school. Have they, in spite of the lack of staff resources they have they been able to contribute any ideas to help the neighborhood? And then the other question is, I believe the school district has the contracts for the youth sports teams for the field use on the weekend. Has there been any exploration, and it seems like this would be outside your purview anyway, but has there been any exploration regarding those contracts to provide some sort of a punitive measure within the contract if those youth sports are parking and otherwise blocking traffic on a regular basis.
Yeah, and what I can say is that the chief of police has been working with the school district, as the chair just stated, and the extent of the conversations, I know that they've been working collaboratively, trying to come up with a combined solution, and that the school district's been proactive from what the police chief has told me. And I'm not aware of any punitive measures that have been explored to date. Yeah.
I actually do have a couple questions for the city. And I know I feel like there's kind of two issues at work here. There's school days and school activities, and then there's weekends where there's soccer and other sports. So they're all related, but still kind of separate. In terms of school days, when it's parking, lunchtime, that sort of thing, has the city been able to look at other, because being a high school, someone who went to Sonoma Valley High and other people can attest to it, getting in and out of that high school parking lot was always a challenge, and my understanding is it still is to this day. So a lot of students are going to want to park out and around the school and are less likely to, they don't have the incentive to park inside the school. So ingress and egress would be one issue. My understanding, and I don't know where it stands right now, but when the new facility was built at Denmark Street, was potentially going to be an ingress and egress for, now, I don't think that's necessarily solving a problem, it's just kind of shifting it to a different neighborhood. But in terms of the city working with the school district on opening up ingress and egress to further incentivize kids to park in the parking lot and not in and around the surrounding neighborhoods, they can quickly get away with the, when school's out.
Denmark off of 5th East?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because my history out there is that that's a very vocal neighborhood about having any sort of cars parked in there coming over from Napa and playing soccer over there. That there's a lot of people watching when cars park over there and little kids get out and play soccer.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal experience. Now, in terms of like opening up the parking lot and having a wider driveway, is that the question to improve egress and
Well,
egress?
I mean, it's not necessarily making a wider driveway, but I know it gets congested because you have the high school exiting and coming in, then you have Adele drop off, and it's kind of, that's really the main, really the only place you can get in and out of that parking lot. And my understanding is that some people just don't want to park in the parking lot for that exact reason, because it takes them 20, 30 minutes to get out after school or to drop off or whatever it might be. I'm just wondering, and this is me kind of thinking a little, well, this is me just thinking, would it be possible to work with the school and the school district to look at other routes of egress, maybe along Broadway, or opening something up at Adele, or changing around drop-off. And again, like I said, Denmark, I know that that's just shifting a problem from one place to another, so that's not what I'm proposing, but just more the traffic flow coming in and out of the high school and Adele.
Yeah, and one of the problems that we face there is it's Caltrans right-of-way, bordered by FVUSD right-of-way. And so really the city doesn't have any right-of-way in the area per se that we maintain. And so any design changes with the street would go through Caltrans and the school district. So, and the chief is really the one that's been collaborating and working with the school district on this. And so thinking about hours in, out, peak times, one thing that I know is that in my neighborhood, you want to avoid the school during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. And because it just gets real congested. It's the nature of having a school and having all those kids get out at the same time. So, but that could be something that the chief could weigh in on a little bit more, because he's probably got a little bit more tires at the road with that.
No, that's great. Thank you. Anybody else?
Something I've noticed at my high school is that a major, we have huge congestion issues after school gets out as well. And I think a major cause of that is having the school's driveway doesn't have right of way at the intersection, and so it causes like a lot of like all of the cars are going in and out of the same driveway, and there's no right of way, and so perhaps something could be done to like establish temporary right of way for the school. Like, I'm not sure if that's possible, but I think that's a problem.
Yeah, and basically giving that phase of the signal priority at drop-off and pickup time.
Yeah.
And that's something that could be researched with Caltrans. And, this is a long-term solution that has potential, because if you make the school parking lot more appealing to park in, i.e. less congestion leaving in the afternoon, more people will use it. Yeah, so that's something that could be explored with Caltrans.
I do have a couple of questions, but I think I want to listen to the public comment first and try and get a better feel for what most folks are concerned about. I know this summarizes it very well, but I do have some questions regarding the meeting that you guys attended with all the parties as well.
Sounds great. We'll defer.
Yeah, unless there's any further comment or question from the committee itself, we would open this up to public comment.
Adam, would you like me to read the public comment I got
Oh, that's right.
submitted first?
Yeah.
And I apologize for the technical thing. Something was unplugged.
No, that's okay. Yeah, we received some comments via email, and we're kind of changing the way public comment's gonna occur. So we're gonna read some of the emails that we received, and then we'll open it up to the folks that have joined us tonight.
Okay, the first one is from Stephen Buxton, and it said, I'd like to comment that this stretch of East MacArthur Street does have a lot of traffic, that the traffic is often traveling way too fast, and that there is a noise nuisance. I live at 324 East MacArthur Street. It would be most useful to have some kind of traffic calming, such as speed bumps. Oh, I'm reading the wrong one. Forget it.
That's okay. Yeah, no, it's one big neighborhood, so there's a lot of gray area. But for right now, this is the parking, everything on MacArthur Lane, Donner, that area. So in terms of that specific neighborhood, I'll open it up for public comment for MacArthur Lane, Donner, and 2nd Street.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. My name's Judith Alex, and I live at 920 2nd Street, and I am the one who has put together the form for you tonight. I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd also like to give a big shout out to the police department and Chief Petting. They've been incredibly helpful as we navigate trying to find a reasonable solution for everybody. I'd just like to recognize the neighbors, all here in support of our efforts to try to get this resolved. There have been 3 major changes in the neighborhood over the past couple of years. The development of the athletic fields, the Sonoma Splash Community Pool, and the expansion of MacArthur Place. Our little neighborhood has been on the front lines of these changes. But there is a 4th change that has really had a major impact. That is the change in student parking habits. Our neighborhood has become a satellite parking lot. We have nothing against the students. However, it has piled up, and tonight we're asking for your help. Neighbors frequently are unable to get their own mail because cars are parked in front of their mailboxes. There's been a notable uptick of noise, traffic, and trash. We're all picking up trash all the time. And Chief Cutting has noted there's plenty of parking in the dedicated high school parking lot for all of the cars that park all day long in front of our homes. We're seeking your assistance to mitigate all of these issues that we can have safer streets and a balance for everyone. We understand the city ordinance grants you the authority to control the parking time limits. When we submitted this form in August, we were asking for a 3-hour parking limit. Based on our meeting on January 23rd, we are now amending that request because it doesn't look like a 3-hour limit will work. So we're asking now for a 2-hour parking limit, 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday. This will still allow people to use the fields, to come park, to walk their dog, to drop off and pick up their students as they like, to use the pool. But it would help us get all these cars off our streets. Thank you, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Will Chan, C-H-A-N. I'm a resident of MacArthur Lane for the last 8.5 years. I never had a problem in public speaking, so, okay. So again, name is Will Chan. I've been a resident of MacArthur Lane in Sonoma for about 8.5 years. I helped put together this lovely form with all the visuals. So, you know, I think when I first moved into the neighborhood after my wife and I got married, and she purchased the house before I moved in, so she's been a resident for about 13, 14 years. You know, we used to have a very collaborative principal and the school district where they would put out signs and flyers that faculty and students can park there. Subsequent administrations and whatever else, that's changed. You know, we've been trying to work with the school district. You know, the previous, I think, superintendent, and again, he's no longer here, we had meetings with him and we're trying to collaborate with him. So this has been a long-standing problem. And where the issue in my, you know, it's a cause and effect. Before the athletic field went in, we didn't have as many problems. It was mostly students, and the school district was collaborative. As a result of the athletic field, and now the swim center and whatever else, we have multiple issues. And so the visual you're showing right now from Google Earth, the lower left, where the, you know, the pathway that leads to the field, that is a spot where parents park, double park, and just congregate there as an informal drop-off and pickup spot. I've invited others in our past conversations to come by the neighborhood between 2:45 and 3:15, see how the traffic is. Okay? You know, parents are parked in that corner. One of the visuals shows a white car. That happens all the time in that corner. And, you know, it blocks traffic. And then students speeding up and down the street, parents coming in. You know, when you have the athletic field on the weekends with the soccer parents, Saturday morning in the summer, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., they're there. They rotate through several groups, but everybody has an SUV, minivan, you name every size, Range Rovers, Escalades, and whatever. They're parking all the way, just as much as they can, and block our driveways. So again, what we're trying to find is some medium to keep the public street a public street. But we've also had instances where, as a result of the athletic field, I actually have I think I took some pictures. I'm not sure if it's in with that, I forgot. We had a street vendor park in the neighborhood, unload his cart, and he's selling hot dogs at the games. I don't begrudge a guy making a living, but that's actually happening in our neighborhood. So things like that, whatever we can do to potentially just rectify the situation is what we're looking for.
Thank you. Real quick, just Cathy, is your timer working? Mine keeps flashing on and off. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. It's all right. All right. Further comments regarding MacArthur Lane, 2nd East, and Donner? Oh. Okay. If there aren't any further public comments regarding MacArthur Lane, I'm just going to refer to it as MacArthur Lane. Are there any comments from the committee or discussion by the committee?
I have a quick question. So is there a specific area where these proposed signs would go? I mean, when you're looking at the Google image, right? They could be all over. Would it be all throughout Second, down MacArthur Lane, then Donner, and onto East MacArthur? Is there a specific, has it gotten that detailed, or?
That's a great question, Commissioner Wyrick, and I would have put it straight to Chief Cutting. However, I'm going to defer and see if there's been some discussion out there regarding where PD and the neighbors have discussed where the signs would go.
Yes.
And you can come right up to the microphone and
There
tell
has-
us. Thank you, Judith.
There has been discussion that there's a new law in California about extending the red curb around crosswalks, and that's going to be implemented over the next year. So that is going to be pushing the traffic down our streets even more so. So the discussion with Chief Cutting was that it would be along 2nd Street East between MacArthur Street and MacArthur Lane, down MacArthur Lane, and then, if possible, in the cul-de-sac all the way through MacArthur Lane, because they're parking down there and smoking out. And then Donner Avenue all the way up to MacArthur Street. I haven't heard any discussion about East MacArthur Street. So that would be something I would defer to Chief Cutting on that one.
Yeah, Commissioner Wyrick, that pretty much was what I was thinking. And so it's the entire zone in red of the 3 legs of 2nd Street East, MacArthur Lane, and Donner Avenue, not including East MacArthur Street at this time. Including the cul-de-sac that's just outside the red square.
I do have one question. Or have you explored the whack-a-mole effect if they were able to restrict parking in this area? Is it just going to, Americans are lazy, but they'll park as close as they can. It seems to me I could see them going down a little bit further down 2nd Street East and Donner Avenue. Would there be an inclination then to do more restricted parking for those areas as well, just to get, I'm empathetic to what's going on here.
And I'm going to refer to the word that Judith Alex mentioned a few minutes ago, a balance. Trying to find a balance, and if we could come up with a proactive, tactical approach to apply the right measures at the right time with enough permanent measures, and as some of the commission has suggested earlier, tinker around with the signal timing, get the ebbs out of there, the peaks, and really work with trying to improve the problem over the long term, along with some immediate things at the appropriate times that we could see some progress. But here again, a balanced approach. Yeah.
If I may make a quick question, I may have missed it, but it seems to my understanding that this didn't used to be an issue, but something changed, and now all of this parking on MacArthur and 2nd Street, it seems like now that is an issue. So I'm just curious, what the changes that caused that shift, and if there can be anything done to resolve the issue at its source.
A couple of the changes that were noted earlier were the athletic field and the aquatic swim center and other various things that could have increased the amount of people that are parking there.
I gotcha. Is this during school hours or all the time?
The item that was proposed earlier was 2-hour parking limit 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday. And I believe that the athletic events are spilling over onto Saturday, and that's why it's not just Monday through Friday.
Gotcha.
So I think my question would be, this is, not that I want to put this on the police department or Chief Cutting, but I know that they're, at the focal point of this in terms of enforcement and being out. Is it the police department that ultimately makes the decision on the 2-hour parking?
The police department is tasked with the management of permit parking. They'll have a recommendation about 2-hour parking, and so will planning, and so will public works. And it seems like between the three of those entities, we could work with the traffic safety committee meeting and talk about the pluses and minuses and try to come up with estimate. Like I said, we had a super collaborative discussion out in the neighborhood. And one of the things that the chief was talking about with the neighbors was, is 3-hour parking going to work? Because the kids, if the problem is with students, the students could come out of school, move their car at the, just like right on the nubbin when they get out of break, and then the 3 hours would start again. And they could possibly do that 2 times in a day, and the problem would not get any better potentially. So I believe that's why the neighbors have been collaboratively talking, working together, and have come up with the 2-hour parking limit. I'm not sure that we have any of that around town that isn't permit parking. And so this will probably require working with planning, community development, and maybe changing the muni code potentially. And that's something that could be explored.
Yeah, I think for purposes of this committee, that now we've got a good working knowledge now of what. This is my thought. We have a good kind of idea of what's going on. I know this committee's read through the material here, but I think we would definitely need to hear from the chief and the department and everything else before. My thought is before moving forward with any recommendations or suggestions. I think there's just a little more information to be gathered. That's my feeling. Obviously, we're a committee, so everybody's can jump in.
So just to clarify, in terms of these measures that are being proposed, are there some that are, if we were to move forward with them, they're likely to happen more quickly, easily because of the process? To get some idea of once we get the ball rolling, how long is this going to take? Because this has been in the works for a while. So just for my own understanding.
Well, number one, it depends on the measures.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to come up with tonight.
Yeah.
If it involves a change to the municipal code, that could take at least 2 council meetings.
Yeah.
If the council approved it. Yeah, and so, we can't paint in the wintertime. So the possibility of going out there this week and putting red curbs out is not an option. Yeah, but there are certain things that could be done a little sooner. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm prepared to talk about tonight is, and it's going to happen in a future item, but it is putting red curbs down. As was already mentioned tonight, and I have a copy of the state law here. The law changed on January 1st, 2024. And as it was previously mentioned, I've got the numbers and I'll share them later. But Public Works is planning, this is not enforceable until January 1st, 2025. But we can go out and we can put red curbs in the locations that have been designated, because this year, calendar year 24, is going to be a trial period where people can understand that it's just like a fire hydrant, parking next to a crosswalk or next to a point of crossing. And then starting 1/1/25, that's a ticketable offense. Okay. And so I do have a plan to, not just that school zones obviously are a high area that have our attention, but also we've talked about Spain Street residents about putting red curb on there. And so Spain Street, MacArthur, potentially MacArthur Lane, Sasserini School, the high school, anywhere where we have visibility issues associated with people crossing, we're going to target those first and go out and put red curb on the ground as part of an internal project.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and here again, you want the temps up and no rain, so the paint sticks around for a long time. Yeah, and then putting up signs is pretty easy too. but getting the verbiage and the permissions required to go out and implement 2-hour parking is something that was discussed. And, you know, like I said, we could talk to community development about that. Jennifer's great about having the thought process and knowing where all the different municipal codes are, because it's certain times that put in the municipal code in multiple spots. And so this is one of those things that we can work with community development to implement.
I think that's helpful.
Just my perspective on this, I think with implementing 2-hour parking, it sounds like there's a lot that's going to go into that, including potentially changing the Muni code. If the residents aren't against it, my thought is just to make it permit parking in those areas, because the mechanism's already in place, that program's already established, that we could do permit parking. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, that we could do that. And that topic was discussed at the community meeting. And I believe that the residents are leaning away from that and more towards the 2-hour parking, like was stated tonight. 2-hour limit. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yep, the residents.
Yeah, there was a
that's
lot
what
of
they want.
pluses and minuses brought up in the
Mhm.
meeting. And I believe what we heard tonight was a summary, and I don't be fooled that there's only 2 people here from the neighborhood. I recognize a lot of faces. I think that,
Yeah, I saw the spreadsheet with all the names. So.
yeah, and so I think what was presented to us is a summary by basically 2 people that are speaking for the entire group.
Okay. Yeah. If the residents aren't in support of it, then I'd definitely be open to looking into making that 2-hour parking change from the 3-hour that's already established in the city.
Yeah, yeah, if you have a quick question. Yeah, if you could come up and,
I think to your direct question, we're open as a neighborhood to whatever is the best option and as amicable with the city and others involved. And just because, again, I think that some of these folks have lived in the neighborhood are the original residents for 20 plus years. And so, again, we've seen the progressive change. We just want to do something that's reasonable. So if it's easiest to get past resident-only parking, we're open to understanding what the pros and cons are, because we had one meeting about it, okay? I think 2 hours is amicable. Again, we're just trying to find what is the balance between the city, the school, and public use. I think, Mr. Brennan, to your earlier question, yeah, you know, one of my questions in the form was, who is contracting the youth sports? Is the city or the school district? Who's getting the financial benefit? You know, got to think of it in that sense. They have the right to enforce, to your point. Don't park in the streets. That's just my thoughts.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, that was my thought was just with the 2-hour parking. There's workarounds that people will find ways to negate that 2-hour parking restriction, and so just thinking about it from an enforcement standpoint as well, it's easy to go to an area. If there's a permit displayed, it's all good, and if not, a warning, there's a warning period and whatnot, but then a citation can be issued rather than having to confirm the vehicle's been there 2 hours, whether it be via chalk or LPR or whatever the system is in place. The permit seems to be much easier to enforce, at least from my perspective, and I don't know if the sheriff's deputy might be able to attest to that or not.
Yeah, please come on up.
So my name is Deputy Sarah. I'm here standing in for Mike Pierre, who's our traffic enforcement officer. But he's my partner. We do work together. I think it would be easier just because there is only 2 of us really in that prime time, during school hours. We do have another officer that comes in at 1, but to be able to, for us to keep track of people parking for 2 hours, it's just, I don't think that's possible. So yeah, to do something like that, it'd be easier for us as patrol deputies.
Thank you. Yeah, and then, just being familiar a little bit with the VIP program that the sheriff's office has, that's the volunteer in policing and whatnot. Those are a lot of the people that you see in the electric vehicle around the plaza, chalking tires and things like that. And those aren't set schedules to my knowledge and things like that. So I just looking at it from the ability to have people not have workarounds for that. That's the reason that I'm kind of thinking about the permit parking. And it seems like it'd be a lot easier to get put in motion, less of a time lag and things like that. And then much like the whack-a-mole effect that was referenced earlier, I have a feeling that if we start, clamping down a little on this neighborhood, we might see that Denmark, Easton, Brockman area increase. And then so to potentially just have something, that as an option, the permit parking potentially in there as an option. That's just my, 2 cents just thinking about it.
And Chief Cutting is the expert on this. The permit parking is administered by the police department and enforced. And I would defer to him.
Okay. Yeah, and then I understand there is just thinking about, for visitors and whatnot, there are visitors passes that are given to homeowners if they were to have guests come by that were going to park on the street. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
And I'm also under the opinion that this could require a municipal code alteration also, because I believe that the streets that are named in the permit parking program are part of either a resolution or the municipal code. And that would have to be updated and changed because these streets are not in it. I believe there's 5 streets in it, and there are the streets around town, like First Street West, close to the high school and close to the back of the post office, Church Street behind Araldi's, and there's 1 or 2 more in town.
Betancourt.
By the hospital, yes. And it's not just Betancourt. There's another street over there that's got the signs on it also. Yeah. So basically, those are all listed by name in the ordinance. Yeah, and so that would have to be modified.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one quick question. So during this meeting, was there any conversation with the school resource officer being involved with assisting with ticketing? To me, it sounds like a huge part of the problem is during school hours and students being there all day. When looking at the bigger picture, I also live fairly close to you all. So I understand on weekends, there's certain time frames during the weekends, but if you have a car parked out, multiple cars parked out there all day long, that can be not ideal. So if the SRO was involved in this process, I feel like that would help eliminate a lot of the issues already.
Yeah, and I think what I've heard Chief Cutting say is that the fact that the SRO is on campus frees up the other police officers to do some of the normal job, like potentially ticket enforcement in here. And so regardless of whether that officer is working on it, it's an extra body. And so it's going to create extra time for the other officers if they're not getting bogged down on doing high school business or something like that. And so it's going to help. But I'm not sure if it would be specifically that officer or just one of the others that had more of their time freed up.
Thank you.
Let me just jump in real quick. Based on a conversation I had with the chief, it sounds like the SRO he's got Yeah, yeah. I don't want to say he's busy right now. So,
Thus the need.
yeah. Let's sorry, Greg.
Go ahead.
So just want to make sure that you guys are understood that it's not an SRO, it's a community resource officer. So even though he does dedicate a lot of time to Sonoma Valley High School, he's also addressing other schools around the valley. So it's not just the high school. So he is definitely doing a lot. So just want to make sure that I pointed that out.
Thank
that's
you.
great.
That's
Thank
what
you.
I was wanting clarification on.
So I'm hearing two problems, and I'm sure when you guys moved in, this was probably the last thing you thought about was this parking lot that occurs there. And the first problem is the high school and the swim center and all that, and the high school events on Friday night for football and soccer and so on. And then there's the youth sports stuff, and having been a parent of both, there's not a lot of attention. I think Director Berger even pointed out the local neighbors on Denmark sort of did their own unwelcoming committee to folks. I think you guys, I know I support what you'd like to see, which is quiet and fair use of your driveways and your parking, for guests coming to you. And it's a conundrum. It's a conundrum because in our world today, if courtesy were so common, everyone would have it. And I don't think we see much of that anymore. And so we have to resort to these, restrictions and so on. And I commend you and I commend Director Berger and the planning and the chief for working together. And even more so that you guys are willing to roll over a little bit and give up some of that quiet enjoyment just to get it somewhat enjoyable. I wish there was a way, and it's what I'm hearing from you is we can't just we get a couple things going, but we just can't race out and resolve this tomorrow for them, obviously, and that everybody's moving forward on it. I guess, whatever they think and the chief thinks that are reasonable, I'm for that, just so that we have, in that neighborhood and every other neighborhood, including mine, quiet enjoyment for where we live.
Yeah, no, that was well put. Couldn't agree more. And on that note, for MacArthur Lane, any other discussion among the committee members? If not, I would ask Director Berger. Mark?
I was just going to ask, are you looking for some direction from the committee tonight? I feel like we don't have all of the details that we might need to make a decision specifically on which direction to go. But if I'm correct, kind of from what everybody's spoken to this evening, I don't think anybody's in opposition of a parking restriction, whether it be 2-hour or permit. I think maybe, I don't want to assume too much, but the feel that I'm getting is that whatever the city, the police department, and the parties involved think is best, at least I'm personally in support of, whether that be 2-hour parking or permits. I think all of that sounds appropriate if the city, the police department, and the residents are in agreement with whatever resolution is determined.
Yeah, and I think that one of the options for the committee tonight would be to set up an ad hoc and schedule a meeting for 2 members that are appointed tonight to meet with planning, Public Works, and the police department chief, and basically have a further discussion on this and see where we could take this thing and what sort of measures we think we can implement or have ready for implementation prior to the next committee meeting. So there's an option.
Is it premature to get a preliminary sort of vote, if we were to vote on the measures that have already been suggested, to see where we stand rather than just, I mean, I want discussion, I want to hear it, but just to kick the can down the road a little more is just I'd rather not have to do that. I'd like to see where we are, is ready to act. And your suggestion, I think, is narrowing it down for me. That I feel I have a pretty good sense idea. If it's okay with the people here, that's what I'd like to know, where we're at.
Yeah, and I think obviously, as one member of this committee, I think what we're looking at here is this is one of those areas where I think our job as a committee is to carry out what the public and the police department have come to do. It's we shouldn't be coming up with our own wacky ideas. Whatever the residents of this area and the police department ultimately think is the best option moving forward. I think that's our job, is to take that and say, yep, and send it up to city council. On that note, I do not like kicking the can either. However, I would like to hear more from the chief. I would like to hear from the planning department and public works. And I really like the idea of an ad hoc committee. So when we get to our next meeting, we'll be fully informed and we can move, and then we can make a more informed recommendation. That's my input as one member of this group. If somebody wants to make a motion, that's obviously up to you. I like getting more info before I make a final decision.
I agree with you there. I think, and I would love to attend an ad hoc meeting and talking more, especially if it's involving changing code. I think that's really important to notate and pay attention to.
I motion that we create an ad hoc committee to discuss the options of MacArthur Lane neighborhood.
I'm going to second that motion.
We have a roll call vote. Vice-Chair Branconi,
Aye.
Committee Member Brennan,
Aye.
Committee Member Wyrick,
Aye.
Chair Lobsinger,
Aye.
Committee Member Coster.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
And I think that the next step would be to choose 2 members from the committee to be on the ad hoc, and then we could work towards setting a date for our meeting in the next 2-3 weeks and get everybody's schedules together, which Public Works can facilitate.
Now, just because this is a first one for us, do we just nominate each other? Do I get to start making some decisions here?
I think the group just come up with 2. I already heard a volunteer.
I heard one volunteer, so I'm going to nominate Committee Member Wyrick for sure.
And then you've already attended or at least spoken to the chief about it. I'm happy to do it, but if you're interested in it, I'd be happy with that as well.
I nominate Committee Member Branconi as well.
All right.
All right. All right. Sounds like we have our 2 members for the ad hoc committee, and work with the city to come up with a recommendation. I think we can take it up at the next meeting and have something moving forward.
Yeah, and we can schedule that within, like I said, the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll work with the 2 committee members and the chief and planning on setting that up. Great.
All right. With that, now that we've I'm going to close this item, and we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda from the Department of Public Works and Director Berger.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight, and I have not attached the traffic hazard reporting form for that. We've seen it in the past, and it was actually part of it, I believe, was in the minutes. But West Spain Street, from First Street West to Fifth Street West, as discussed, this stretch of Spain Street is due for paving in our next paving project. The issue on the street is speeding. We have a CIP project that is about to start design for that stretch of road. It's going to include a couple other roads in the city, and we don't want to go out, put a bunch of traffic calming measures on it, and then have the grinder take them all off and reinstall them. And plus, it's way more efficient to pay a contractor to do it versus having public works crews go out. It takes a long time for our guys, and they are constantly getting pulled off, having to work on other things like on Sunday. Now, we have discussed also about putting physical traffic control measures out there. Ones that have come up in previous discussions are a speed table, a traffic circle, and RRFB ped crossings, like on Broadway. Now, what's currently on Public Works docket is to work with to put together a physical traffic calming measures binder that is going to be brought to the Traffic Safety Committee. It's going to include all three of those measures, if not more. And that's going to be done by our traffic engineering consultant. And I'm hoping to have a draft of that at the next meeting. And that'll include, and if not before, because what we want to do is we want to get it to the committee to have feedback, because each one of these criteria is going to involve a set of standards or measures that will be basically, if you do not meet this criteria, you are not eligible. If you meet this criteria, you are eligible for installation of a RRFB or a traffic circle or a speed table. And so that's really the new news. In addition, that we are going to be talking about, we are going to be implementing, Chief of Police sent this over to me in October and made me aware that the new rules for, that are going to affect several locations throughout the city are the parking standards that specify no longer parking within 20 feet of a crosswalk on the approach side or 15 feet when there's a curb extension. And so that'll go both sides of the crosswalk, 20 feet. Like was stated earlier, this is Assembly Bill 413, Chapter 652 state law signed by the governor. It goes into effect where cars can be ticketed on January 1st, 2025. But we are planning on going out and doing some pre-painting at intersections that have been brought to our attention that warrant either visibility concerns of pedestrian crossings or some other safety factor, like next to a school, next to the high school, etc. So we're going to be focused on Prestwood, Sasserini, the high school, and other areas on collector arterials where it's already been brought to our attention that there's a little bit of a visibility problem. And so that's one of the things that we're hoping will alleviate some of the concerns when we do our paving job. Nothing will happen to the red painted curb, and we don't have a problem going out there and putting some red paint on the ground before that project starts. So for right now, that is staff's report, and I can take any questions.
No questions, is more of a comment actually, which would be all of it sounds great so far. With regards to what the report that's being put together of all the different traffic calming measures, definitely if we could, I know you're working on anything we can get prior to the next meeting, because I know we'll all want to take a look at it, and well, I'm sure we'll have some input and some feedback. But definitely looking forward to getting that report.
In terms of traffic calming, so you've mentioned three primary ones: the table, the circle, and then the light. In other areas of the globe, what are the federal government restrictions and or the state restrictions to the unique painting that we see in some of the other countries? Japan, I know, makes big use of that. where crosswalks and whatnot are painted in a way in white, but also have an appearance that there's a speed table that isn't there, for example. I don't have anything on the internet to show you right now, but there are a wide range of road coatings that are supposedly effective as traffic calming. I guess the big question is, like, are we limited to those three? Are there others?
Oh, yeah, there's others. And
Is there any reason to worry about them? Or
well, a lot of the others we've implemented at 5th and Spain East, like continental crosswalks. And throughout the last 15, 20 years, crosswalks have gone from 2 bars, continental ladder rungs, and now Caltrans has a new one that they're doing that the city of Sonoma hasn't adopted yet. And what we try to do is stay on top of MUTCD guidelines. And to my knowledge, this is the approved standard for right now. This is what the traffic engineer is recommending and has recommended at the different spots that we did on our last project at 5th and Spain. And so that is what we're currently using right now. But I could query the traffic engineer and see if there's any new technology out there that could help out with pedestrian safety.
Yeah, arrows in the quiver. That's on. Are there others that are worth considering or not? You guys are the pros.
Well, my favorite are the bumps at the left turn coming into town on Napa Street, turning on to 5th, because people slam their brakes rather than go over all those bumps. And it's those little creative things that we can do by looking at each location and trying to determine what the problem is. And if the problem is just slowing people down, then, 2 of the items that we're going to have a boilerplate canned, is your street eligible per our criteria, will be there for the Director of Public Works, future Directors of Public Works, to go ahead and implement them, or tell someone who's requested one that, no, you're not eligible for this reason. Yeah.
Any other committee members?
Just for clarification, those traffic circles, are they permanent, or they can be moved if it's sort of experimental type thing?
They are temporary prior to construction in some areas, is my understanding. So I don't know that removable is the right. The traffic, the speed table that we're going to put in on next to the cemetery on East Napa Street, that is removable. Yeah. And that will go in. That currently, I was going to do this in my report out tonight, but basically there's a lot of striping that has to get done with that. Thermoplastic, and we can't do thermoplastic in the winter. Has to be 60 and rising for that stuff to stick. We put some down last year on a couple of days that were maybe good enough, and it peeled off. And it's not cheap, the type that we use, because it's easier to install. And so we want to really be careful about putting that down and making it stick. But the speed table is removable, the type that we're getting. There's also asphalt ones that are permanent, which we're not putting in on Napa Street. But then the temporary traffic circles, they tend to put those in where they're going to put in a permanent one, and they're putting it in kind of to see, okay, how does it fit? Because they look very temporary, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And there's a couple of them that have been installed in the county, and the permanent ones are, they're in minutes tonight. There's some permanent ones that are shown on page 5 of 27 of our minutes, which Cathy's pulling up right now. And also we've got a couple of design standards for them in the minutes that were approved tonight. So the permanent ones, though, are much, much harder to take up. And I think the thought process is you put in a temporary one, you see what's working, what's not, you tweak it, you twist it a little bit, get some observation out there by people that are in the know, and then you put in the permanent one, which is much more hard to remove.
And that would be the one you're thinking of for Spain Street?
The traffic engineer has a concept design in mind.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and just, that's a temporary one in the middle.
And just to clarify, the kind of the guide, if you will, regarding the traffic measures, you think that by our next meeting, that would be complete?
A draft.
A draft would? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It would not be complete. My goal is to have a draft put together for Traffic Safety Committee's review, and even possibly get it to you before then.
Okay. Yeah, that would be perfect. I think, just with this all, being brought in front of us with requests from residents and whatnot, having the city have a guide and a document for us to kind of direct folks would sure be helpful, so that we don't have, things popping up every which way, and if it can be done based upon the the circumstances, whether it's a collector arterial, traffic incidents. I think I mentioned this at one of our previous meetings. Have we had traffic collisions there? Do we have speed surveys and things to back it up? So if it's kind of evidence based, rather than an emotional basis for installing some of these things, I would love to get behind that.
Yeah, agree 100%. Non-subjective criteria that takes a little bit of the pressure off the decision makers and puts it back on the engineers. And it's something that's been blessed by council, and council supports this. As you know, council authorized the installation of the speed table on a trial basis. And what we decided at that meeting was that there would be no more trial basis installations, but that what we wanted to do was develop this roadmap for these measures and where their installation is applicable and also where it's not.
All right. Unless there's any further comments or questions, we can close this item and move on to the next. Oh, I'm sorry. We skipped over public comment. My apologies. Again, yep, that's right. Thank you. Public comment. I'm going to open up right now. Just a reminder, 3 minutes. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes, and feel free to come up.
Armando Zimmermann, West Main Street. Mr. Berger, what were the three primary things that you mentioned? Tables, circle, and something else. What was the third one? I'm sorry.
RRFB pedestrian crossings.
Is that Broadway?
Yeah.
Are they the ones on Broadway?
Yes, those are the ones that have been installed on Broadway, and you got to address the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, okay. Well, basically, I do have a comment on watching Broadway. Increasing pedestrian safety, physical safety of bicyclists, everything, to me is primary. On the other hand, my experience on Broadway, just what I see, anecdotal, is that it's making it safer for people crossing, but it's not having a tremendous effect on the speed of vehicles. And since I live on Spain Street, I'm concerned about all of these issues, including, like I say, pedestrian safety, trying to mitigate, accidents, anything like that. But I really am, I would say, I'm really looking for something that doesn't just alert drivers or focus drivers when someone's crossing a street. There are there are all those evening hours, late hours, and whatever. And where I live, some of the fastest cars going up and down Spain Street are in the evening, when 10, 11, 12. I mean, I'm not saying the traffic volume is the same, but the speed and the noise, you might say, is continuous because it's ebbing and flowing. So if we're going to use these, I forget the acronym, if we're going to use that, that's not going to help when you don't have a lot of people crossing the street. And so I'm just concerned that that we look at this issue in a much broader fashion. Also, we're looking at the general plan update, the noise element, the miles traveled, the greenhouse tailpipe emission issues, and all of that stuff are I think we need to look at as much as possible that's reasonable to consider. And so I'm not against what's been done on Broadway. I like that, but I don't think it's a solution for a neighborhood street like West Spain Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comments with regards to Spain Street? Not seeing any. I'll put it back to the committee if anybody has any follow-up, any questions.
No questions. I just think we need to wait for the draft plan, and I wouldn't want to do anything else, any other traffic calming measures without that.
Sandra Zimmermann, I live on Spain Street too. I just have a question, a clarification on something that I thought was said. There was a comment, I think, that you made, Mike, about you didn't want any more trial installations. And what was that pertaining to?
No, that wasn't me. That was council.
Oh, council.
Yeah.
Council doesn't want any more trial installation. So that would mean a trial. When I think of a trial installation, I'm also thinking, when I think of traffic circles, that's a trial. You would put up something temporary, correct, and it would, to see if it worked and if it made things safer. So would that fall into that same category?
Yeah, just to clarify my statement, I may have misspoke. Council approved a one-time traffic speed table.
Right.
That's what was approved and nothing more.
Okay.
So that was what was approved by council, and the direction to staff was to implement and look into a sort of palette per se of measures that could be used, 3 of which are, and I refer to them as physical traffic control measures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they aren't necessarily related to speeding. They aren't necessarily related to ped safety per se or bicycle safety. Some of them may be more for speeding than others. Some of them may be more for ped safety than others.
Okay.
But what council approved was a one-time installation of a traffic speed table.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was that comment. Okay. Okay. Listen, I want to thank you all. This isn't an easy job, I know, when everybody has a different opinion and everybody thinks their street should be the most important. So there's a lot of appreciation for you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay. Unless we have any further public comment or any comments, questions from the committee, this is why I'd ask for a motion on something. I don't know if we have a motion for anything. We're just going to let the city keep working on this. And unless I hear a motion, I'm going to just close this item out and move on to the next one. Not seeing a motion, let's move on to the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is 5th Street West, West Spain to Verano Avenue. And this was a previous group that brought their traffic hazard reporting form to the committee. The main topic was speeding. We discussed that in length. A lot of the neighbors got up and gave their 3 minutes at the podium. One of the things that we have done since, and I apologize, I did not get time to include this into our agenda packet. It will be put in the next agenda packet, but we did a speed survey, and the results of the speed survey were that the northbound traffic averaged 27.6 miles an hour, and the southbound traffic, and this is pretty much dead center in the middle of Verano Avenue and Main Street, north of the bike trail. And the average speed for northbound traffic was 27.6 miles an hour, and the average speed for southbound traffic was 24.9 miles per hour. And what I'm doing, I'm not opposed at all to putting traffic calming measures in this area. It's pretty much the 85th percentile on both of those, prospectively, northbound was 33 and 30 miles an hour. This is somewhat similar to what we encountered over at 5th and Napa on the east side of town. And what I want to do is I want to start working with the traffic engineer to come up with the method that we followed over at 5th and Napa, which I believe on the east side, which I believe is a good method, is implement some measures that can be done fairly easily, not too expensive, that are right in our wheelhouse, like fog stripe, traffic, the bicycle legends, some bicycling signs, and maybe put a radar sign up that lets people know, just like on 5th Street East heading westbound, that lets people know how fast they're driving. And then the ped crossing at the bike trail is fully functional. The one that's in there, I was happy to see that today. There are some lights in the pavement that are still working, and the flashing light for northbound is still working. I was at a job on the south side of that earlier. I'm not positive that the one on the southbound is working, but I will check that the next time I go through. So I'm glad to see that we have a functioning pedestrian crossing there, even though it isn't one of the new RRFB ped crossings. And then I'm going to work with the traffic engineer on what sort of initial measures we could implement out there. And those could even, let's see, it's January, March, April, February, March, April. We could have those potentially put down before the next meeting. Yeah, as soon as temps warm up, because that's going to involve a lot of thermoplastic. And that is my update for item number 3, 5th Street West, West Main to Verano Avenue.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up to the committee right now with any comments, questions, concerns on 5th West between Spain and Verano.
At one of the previous meetings, we had discussed maybe an additional crosswalk somewhere north of the bike path. Was there any discussion, or did we look into that at all?
I have not looked into that, but that could be one of the things that we examine as we're going into our first round of traffic calming measures here.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be my request, just to that was one of the topics that came up regarding that sidewalk ending and folks being pushed to that opposing crosswalk on the west side of 5th rather than having them walk down the grass along the Montini field. So if we could just look into that, that would be awesome.
On the list. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great example of where we're using and need both subjective and objective criteria, because the numbers don't jump out at me at all, being 27 miles per hour and 24.9 miles per hour with the 85th percentile being 33 and 30. Nothing really jumps out at me. However, if I live on 5th Street and having lived in this town for most of my life, I know that people speed through there. So the comment is really just, this is a great example of where subjective versus objective, and the calming measures that the city is working on, I think is heading in a great direction. Hopefully it calms down even further, and absent any direction from our committee to the Department of Public Works of the city, I just look forward to the report back at the next meeting. And then, unless anybody else from the committee, I would open up to public comment regarding 5th West from Spain to Verano. Not seeing anybody for public comment. I'm going to send it back to the committee. Anything in the last? Okay, great. I think we can close out this item and move on to the next.
All right, great. The next item we do have a traffic hazard reporting form for, and this is MacArthur Street, Donner to 4th Street East. Speeding is the issue, and difficulty crossing the street with parked cars along East MacArthur Street. And just on that second bullet, one of the items that we will be doing within the next, this summer, when we do our red stripe project, is increasing the site visibility at the crosswalks on that street. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and read some of this. The traffic hazard reporting form that was received, unlike the other one, there's not a bunch of bullets that stand out for me, but I'll go ahead and paraphrase. I have lived in Sonoma for 3 years. I reside at 833rd Street East, corner of East MacArthur and 3rd Street East. As I sit in my office each day, I am appalled at the speed of traffic on East MacArthur. Exceeding the speed limit occurs all day in either direction. This is a grave concern because the area outlined above includes the frontage of Presswood Elementary School. In addition to these speed issues, we continue to have large commercial trucks use the street, despite the posting of signs prohibiting their through traffic. Presswood Elementary School is a vibrant component of our community, and many of the students want to walk to school. I think this is unfathomable that there is not a stop sign at the intersection of Oak Lane and East MacArthur. Just this morning, as I was walking my dog, I saw a young student trying to cross East MacArthur to get to school. To the east, there are several parked cars, and she had to step into the intersection to see if the cars are coming. From the west, despite a sign yielding to pedestrians for crossing, 2 cars went through the intersection without even slowing. While Prestwood has crossing guards during certain hours, they are not there to manage all crossings. Okay, the traffic hazard reporting form goes on to talk about visibility issues, speeding issues, close calls with a dog, a neighbor's dog getting hit, increased road noise. They talk about the condition of the road, and then throwing kudos, being respectful for our time. While we are not traffic engineers, if there's a simple solution, traffic calming solutions in the area noted above, we would respectfully defer to the city experts, but feel doing nothing is a disservice to the community and puts many residents, including young children, at significant risk. In reviewing the past Traffic Safety Committee agendas, I know this topic was brought up September 2017. Unfortunately, I was unable to access the minutes to determine the final decision. Irrespective, this is a serious issue, and we are hopeful you support our request to make changes for the safety of pedestrians along East MacArthur. About 1 year ago, I received a phone call one day of a woman that was complaining about the speed of traffic on MacArthur next to Presswood. Even though I didn't have a traffic hazard reporting form, I went out and I did a speed survey. And we collected data for 5 days. I was able to send that over to the traffic engineer, and I got some information back from them today regarding traffic engineers have a lot, they're very talented in, how to look at the data and get meaningful data out of it. And what I wanted to do, we will incorporate these into the record, but I wanted to pass these out for the committee and let them take a look at what the traffic engineer compiled as a result of the speed data that we took over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. And you could just take a look there. What a speed survey was conducted, and what the traffic engineer did was he plotted speed versus time of day. And basically you could see the 30 miles an hour and 20 miles an hour plotted on the vertical leg of the graph. And then the hours 8 to 4, which is pretty much when school is in session. And, you know, I'd just like to present this data to you, and you can draw conclusions as you see. But I looked at this, and it seemed like a really applicable perspective of looking at the data. And this is just all the cars that were going through the intersection in the 6 days that and this is right in front of Presswood School, that the 6 days that we had our speed radar machines out there. And that, you know, I'd be interested in hearing any questions from the committee at this point.
Looks like people are actually following the law.
When did you do this survey again?
About a year ago.
And school was in session?
I would have to check.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah, and I did not bring this speed survey with me tonight, but I might be able, Cathy might be able to find that right now.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. If we have it available to put up on the screen, or if not, I mean, I
don't mind sharing.
I was gonna say I mean I just need a couple minutes to look at this and I can see it. I'm happy to pass mine back to the community if. I mean, maybe we'll keep one up here just in case, but I think.
Yeah, I agree. So, there are a couple things that, especially as the Fifth Street and Napa Street guy on the east side, the letter writer's comment about sitting in the office and appalled. I feel that. I mean, one of the things that really got me going back in 2018 on Napa Street was screeching and honking tires, and honking horns. The large commercial trucks drive me nuts. And the prohibition against commercial trucks in our neighborhoods is poorly written in the city code, and I know the police department said, well, we can't enforce it as it's written. All I know is that there are communities that disallow trucks. I know, to take it to the extreme measure, in it's on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge in the city. You look out on the Golden Gate where Robin Williams used to live, in those houses, you can't have a commercial vehicle unless it's going literally to deliver. Absolutely no buses can go through there. I would like to see at some point the city attack the commercial vehicle, because commercial vehicles are causing all kinds of other problems, including knocking down utility poles and so on, at least on 5th Street East and East Napa Street. And I see the stats here. People are driving the speed limit 8 to 5 around the school. It seems pretty inarguable. And then as a resident of the town, you know, I used to be in communications, and in public relations they talked about what is and what is perceived, and whether folks are on 5th Street West, north of Spain Street, on Napa Street, on MacArthur Street. The perception is, and I talked a little bit about today about quiet enjoyment. The perception is that the neighborhoods don't get the quiet enjoyment that I, as a citizen, feel we deserve. And to your good work and the work of the traffic engineers, statistically, we're proven wrong. We're proven wrong. It's obvious that a lot of the problems happen in after hours, and there's hot rods and so on. I don't have the expertise to figure out the solution. But I think the common thread among the people who talk to us here is traffic's miserable on our street. People don't pay attention to the traffic speeding laws. We're seeing otherwise, statistically. Back to balance, we've got, I think we somehow as another, as a community, we've got to find some balance where people don't feel like people are driving through the neighborhoods at 40 and 50 miles an hour. That's just a comment, so.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I know that the trucks driving through there, cutting down 8th Street to get to Broadway, to maybe bypass Napa Road, who knows? Or, I mean, for all we know, maybe they're lost, but I mean, there's a lot of commercial truck traffic through there. And I'm looking at this, and again, going back to the objective versus subjective, and seeing the hours, kind of to the dismay of the folks that were just here, we know that part of the high school and Prestwood are used beyond school hours. So whether or not school is in session, it is an important aspect of it. But this being used on the weekend, there's after school sports, and unless there's an atmospheric river like we just had, it's being used quite a bit. So I'm happy to see that during school hours, the speeds are they're not as bad as I thought they would be. Let's put it that way. But it's the commercial trucks. But more importantly, and this is my thought, is I think what's of the utmost importance. Not that any of them are not that anything's not important, but I'd say the priority are the children getting to and from school, because you have kindergartners walking and crossing the street and having no flashing crosswalk, no visual, no barriers to slow people down. And kids are different from us. We are better about looking both ways, or hopefully being less distracted. So the speed aspect of it is definitely an important issue. For me, it's the trucks and making the streets more visible for when kids are going to and from school. Because as a kid who rode his bike to Prestwood every day, or walked, or was dropped off next door, I know that when you're that little, maybe a car going 28 miles an hour is pretty fast, and you want some visual, you want some visual deterrence that people are going to know you're in a school zone. Slow down. That's what really jumped out to me immediately just looking at this.
Just real quick, the question, I can't remember who asked if this was during school and whatnot. Looking at it, looks like it's March roughly 13th to the 19th. I did look at the SVUSD calendar for that year. It was spring break during that week, so school was not in session, or presumably was not in session. But to Adam's point, I don't know that that's necessarily a big concern of mine. I think obviously time of day and things like that are important, but the speeds look to be good, and I don't think that it being spring break was going to make or break this traffic survey. But my only comment is I'd love to hear public comment on this, just so that we could get a feel for everybody's feelings on this. But I'd like to wait to make any decisions until we get that document. Along the lines of making that document, I think that being in a school should be a factor that comes into that, where it may be an exception to the general rules of if this, then you get this, where we might be more inclined to put additional measures in your schools for that purpose.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, one of the things that I was pontificating today was, I think that the sign that we put in the middle of the street at 5th Street West, East 5th Street East, and East Napa Street has worked incredibly good. And I'm definitely putting it on my list to put one in the middle right there at the crosswalk at Oak Lane and MacArthur. And so that we can consider that pretty much done. We've got budget for it. We can go out there and do that in the middle of winter on a day it's not raining. And I mean, that thing's holding up really well. We've only had to replace it once. And I think that that's got a good effect on calming traffic. So we're looking forward to putting one of those in right in the middle of the road.
Awesome, thank you.
Any of the other commissioners have any questions, thoughts, input? And if not, I will open it up to public comment.
Do you want me to attempt to read these again?
Oh, that's right. Thank you, Cathy. Sorry.
Sorry.
We have a couple things written. Go ahead and then we'll read them in.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ed Case. I live at 890 3rd Street East, and I'm the guy who sits in his office and monitors traffic for you guys. Mike read kind of the summary of the report that I had prepared, and even looking at this traffic, which we just saw, what's interesting is if the red line really represents the speed limit, then pretty much they're always over the speed limit. But the point that we wanted to raise was, while school is certainly a risk factor, watching kids try to cross the street, there's a crossing guard there for a portion of the time. And there are a lot of kids who come early for breakfast. There are a lot of kids who stay late for after school. And they don't have a way to get across the street with some support. So many times, I walk my dog over there, some of the others who will speak walk their dogs over there. You just see the struggle of kids trying to get across the street, or you see the struggle of people trying to get across the street. Presswood is an incredible community asset. The school has facilities, they have the field in the back, they have a playground, several playgrounds, they have basketball courts, they have a path to go through to the back of the high school. All of that is being used by the public with people at risk trying to get across the street. And even, looking at some of this information that you just provided, the school hours may look good. I don't think they actually are if you use the red line as the speed limit. But beyond that, you look at the peaks, there's people going 30, 40 plus miles an hour down that street. And this was, again, a period that even didn't include, apparently, the school day. So, we believe, as the folks who are most impacted along that area, something needs to be done. A stop sign is an incredible impediment for people to speed because they do have to come to a stop, and it provides everybody crossing that street an opportunity to expect people to slow down. There are stop signs along East MacArthur, West MacArthur, 2nd Street West, 1st Street West, 2nd Street East, 5th Street East. There's interesting even a stop sign at East MacArthur and Cordillera, which is a street coming out of a subdivision with no sidewalk on the south side of the street. There's not pedestrians who are trying to access East MacArthur to cross at that. And I've only lived here 3 years, but I've never, in driving down East MacArthur, I've never encountered another car coming out that you had to wait for to get out at that stop sign. So I don't know the rationale necessarily for how signs are placed, but it would be a disservice, I think, to not have a sign to allow the students at Presswood and the community at Presswood to access safely crossing the street. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And I think now would be a good time, Cathy, if you could jump in and read the comments we got.
Okay. The first one is Stephen Buxton. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. I'd like to comment on this stretch of East MacArthur Street does have a lot of traffic, and that the traffic is often traveling way too fast, and that there is a noise nuisance. I live at 324 East MacArthur Street. It would be most useful to have some kind of traffic calming, such as speed bumps, to enforce the traffic laws on big trucks, and to resurface the road to cut down on noise. Thank you. And then we have Veronica Buxton. We concur that there is definitely a traffic problem on the street. We live at 324 East MacArthur and have personally observed people, especially trucks, speeding by. We previously made a request and the traffic study was presumably done. However, the problem does continue. We would appreciate anything that could mitigate this issue. That could be a stop sign, a traffic light, paving the road, although that won't help with the danger aspect. We are directly across from the school, so we see this firsthand. And then we have Jim Shea. I live on Donner Avenue, just north of East MacArthur, and I frequently walk my dog on East MacArthur. Cars routinely speed up and down East MacArthur without regard for the possibility of a child or other pedestrian attempting to cross in the crosswalk in front of Presswood Elementary School at the intersection of East MacArthur and Oak Lane. I believe a stop sign at that intersection would be very helpful. While it seems that few drivers come to a complete stop at stop signs anymore, they will at least slow down for the stop sign and perhaps notice a child entering the crosswalk.
All right. Do we have any other comments from the public regarding MacArthur Street between Donner and 4th East? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to send it back to the committee for any questions, comments, concerns.
Again, just waiting, to see the draft of the traffic calming measures that is put together would be good. But, I am, with it being a school, inclined to agree that I like the idea of a stop sign. But that's just a comment.
I agree about the report from the planning department, but are these traffic circles sizable? I think I just distrust people. Stop signs. It's more of a suggestion today than it is a reality. And if you could, and I'm again out of my pay grade here, but if you can put traffic circles on either side of Prestwood, or on even Oak Lane for that matter. I don't know that it's big enough, but again, I'm just a believer in calming, not stopping.
Yeah, and just the little experience that I have looking into this, we did look into that at 5th East and Napa Street, and that intersection is not big enough. And then we looked into it also at 3rd Street West and Spain Street, and that intersection is big enough and would support. However, one of the reasons they put temporary ones out first is you really want to look at the configuration and the speed of traffic, because one of the things that a traffic circle is going to do, if you're driving westbound on Spain Street and you want to make a left on 3rd Street, you're going to have to go through 3/4 of the circle and then turn. And what that does, the traffic circle, by nature of its geometry, pushes cars closer to the crosswalk. And if the cars are getting too close to the crosswalk either has to be moved, or you could have a potential pedestrian vehicle conflict based on the fact that you move the car closer to the crosswalk. And so these are some of the parameters that experts come up with as they're looking at these things, but the width of the intersection at 3rd Street and Spain Street would support, I've been told, would support a traffic circle, whereas the T at 5th Street East and Napa Street would not.
Plus the driveways also enter there, which makes it really problematic in its own right.
Yeah.
Well, what about on East MacArthur?
Unknown, and I haven't queried it.
Yeah, I think kind of what you're saying. Coming into this committee, I was always kind of thinking stop sign, simple solution, done. Let's start throwing them out there. But if there's anything I've learned, a stop sign isn't just the go-to, and it might not have the desired effect that everybody wants. And I have been more in favor of traffic calming type measures. To Mark's point, this is a school. Mark went to school there. I went to school there. We got a bunch of people who went to school there. I see my dad in the back row. He went to school there. Something needs to be done. I mean, our committee can only do so much, and I don't think I can wholeheartedly, I want to lean stop sign, but I don't know if that's the exact solution right now. What I do think we can do right now is, we mentioned the sign in the street, and that had some measurable impact at 5th East and Napa Street. Again, like I said, there's a lot I think we can do as a committee, as the Public Works Department, as the city, but I think this issue being in front of an elementary school needs to be dealt with now. And I'm wondering what else we can do. And my first thought is a lighted crosswalk. Like we have Broadway, they have one in front of Sasserini. I know it's a little different because it's on Highway 12, but by St. Francis, at least you have something that could go up relatively quickly that would at least give that flashing visual deterrent while we consider calming measures versus stop signs versus how police can enforce commercial trucks. I think something more than a sign needs to be done right now that says speed limit 25 in the middle of the street.
I agree with that. I'm a mother of two under 5, and so they don't pay attention all the time, and so an accident can happen so quickly. And another thing I was thinking about is just early mornings and in the evening, those streets aren't super well lit, so something that stands out to slow people down.
So I had a question about those crosswalks or lights that are now in front of St. Francis and Adobe Drug. Is that crosswalk? How did those end up getting in there? What was the process for that to happen? Because those are extremely effective. I mean, you're going to stop. People stop at that when you hit that light. So can you enlighten me on that?
Yeah, those were installed prior to me getting here. That's on Caltrans right away. And I believe it's called the Hawk system. And I've heard positives and negatives about that. The negatives I've heard is that the actuator doesn't make the light start working right away. And while I haven't had time to talk to Caltrans about this, what I've heard is that the actuator gets pushed and then there's a delay from the time the signal starts blinking yellow to when it turns red. And what people are doing is they see somebody sitting there waiting for the signal to initiate, and they stop to let the pedestrian go because it's a crosswalk. And you're used to stopping at that crosswalk and letting people cross. And then the signal starts functioning after the pedestrian is crossed. And then the cars are confused because it's blinking red and there's nobody there. Yeah, so I would not support a Hawk in front of Prestwood. It's too big. It's overkill. But I would definitely support our RFB. And what we could do is we could start looking into the potential spots that it can be put at, because there's a lot of criteria when it comes to putting these things in. The ones that we put in on Broadway were installed in a 6 foot deep by 2.5 foot diameter reinforced concrete foundation. And there's a lot of utilities that get encountered when you're trying to put one of those in. They have to get adjusted. There's not much real estate to put them in the first place in terms of where they can be effective. And you still have room for ADA to get wheelchairs by, etc. So what we could do is we could go out and take a look at that corner at Oak Lane and MacArthur in front of the school and see if it's a candidate, because the trees are going to affect it. The good thing is they're on the downstream side of approaching cars for eastbound traffic. So they're not going to be, because those trees, I mean, if the trunk of the tree's in the way, it's not a starter. But number one, we got to get, there's a couple of engineers that help us make the determinations about site distance, etc. So we could go out, Public Works could go out and take a look at that. And we're wrapping up our 4 crossings at Broadway that were initiated as part of the overlay project. And then Caltrans' project when they removed our other 2 crossings at Andrix, France, and Patton. And so that's something that we could look into doing. Part of the problem with drilling holes in the wintertime is that the hole fills up with water. So it probably wouldn't get done till, depending on how the winter is, later spring. But that's something that we could look into. Yeah. And it's a good candidate because it's a school. Yeah, and I mean, those are the first four that we did. We did them with all our forces. The crossings on Broadway, the ones on at Presswood, if from a sight distance standpoint and a physical standpoint that we could put it in, that would be an effective next step because schools and bike crossings were the two places that we were going to consider in the future. Yeah.
Is there any type of, what you're saying makes sense. I know it's a very tight area, also a very important area, but in digging, I understand all that. Are there any above ground options where it's just a light and a flashing sign? I mean, this isn't the same thing, but even this, like the stop signs that went up at 5th West and Andrew, at least you got a flashing stop sign. I mean, if you just have a flashing ped crossing sign, not in ground, while we look at in ground, anything that can slow traffic down that's above ground and could be done relatively quickly.
Yeah, and anything, okay, the flashing stop signs we just put in at Andrix and 5th are solar powered. All the RRFB pedestrian crossings we put in on Broadway, the 4 at Clay Street, Malay, France, Andrix, and Patton are all solar powered. Okay, the crossing on, the first thing that came to mind when you said that was the crossing on for the bike trail on 5th Street West in between Verano and Spain Street. That requires electricity. Now they may have something like that is solar powered, and plunking something like that up would be the RRFBs. That's 4 or 5 different signs, solar panel, flashers, all stacked on top of each other. But the sign similar to what's on the bike trail crossing on 5th Street West between Verano and Spain is a lot smaller. And if there's a solar option available for something like that, even those RRFBs, the Hawk units that Caltrans put on Highway 12 near the library in St. Francis School, I mean, those things are massive. That's for a full-on signal mast arm over a 30 or 40-foot intersection, minimum, probably more like 60. Whereas the RRFB units that we just put in on Broadway, that's on a 4-inch steel Type 1A Caltrans pole with a 6-foot deep foundation. I'm questioning whether or not that isn't going to be too big for that area. And so coming up with something a little smaller that could possibly be put in faster is something that we could look into.
Yeah, and I think and I know I've asked you this question a few times over, the last few months, and I'm still working to clear it up in my head, because the RFB, they do sound like it's going to be a heavy lift. I think of 5th West where it's, 3 lanes plus bike lanes, or Broadway being very wide. Like that, it does seem like it'd be too tight of an area to do that, but I hope it's not kind of a zero-sum game where it's like, area's too small, we can't do any type of flashing. I think we need to come up with some type of a middle ground where we have some level of flashing indicator that there's a kid trying to cross the street without having to do a 6-foot hole with the Caltrans pole and the hawk lighting and all that stuff. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is that middle ground of something. And I know I say quickly, this is not this issue it's not a brand new issue. So while being expeditious is good, I'm just looking for something that would be better for smaller, tighter areas of the town. And for all we know, Presswood could be the first, kind of experiment for this. We have a smaller couple of flashing lights, not having to dig in ground, not having to connect to electricity, none of that stuff. And then it could, down the road, be other areas that have a high volume of pedestrian traffic that on streets that aren't traditional, highways, arterial, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I'm looking for right now. And I guess that's just a comment for me.
It's more of a question. I think one of our colleagues spoke about this last meeting, and that's how directional the lights would be. I'm assuming if it's evening, 5 o'clock in the winter, and I'm making dinner and my house on MacArthur, you know, having lights flashing could be a little bit of a doozy. So I know there are street lights, you know, configured red, green, yellow that are pretty highly directional, but I don't know if that ties into the flashing lights in the pedestrian crossings.
Yeah, the ones that we just installed on Broadway, they don't discriminate. They send it out in every direction, and they want to be as highly visible as possible, so all cars approaching from both directions see them going. Exactly. Yeah.
Could you potentially have something like an island in the middle of the road that you can like rest in until a car in the opposing direction has passed? It might make it like crossing the road a little bit less intimidating, but I don't know if there's enough space to do such a thing.
Yeah, I think you're constrained with real estate at that intersection. That's a pretty small street to cross. Yeah, I think you barely have room for 2 cars parked and 2 cars driving. And so that's one of the narrower streets. And I think if you put an island in there, then you'd probably have to restrict parking. And I'm just not sure how practical and effective that would be. But it's something that, you know, could be looked into.
What about something like an elevated crosswalk where vehicles have to slow down in order to cross the crosswalk without like doing permanent damage to their car? So like kind of a speed table, but underneath the crosswalk, you know?
Yeah, and speed tables will be in the manual that we're developing. And as we said, we're going to do one trial and then see how it holds up, reacts, is received by the community.
I like the idea of a solar powered option that's maybe a little less involved in the RFB. My only thoughts with that is that area is a little bit more covered as far as trees and things like that. So I don't know how much opportunity for the sunlight there is, like compared to Fifth and Andrix, where those are direct sunlight, which also brought to mind with the past few days where we had, pretty good cloud cover for a few days. How did those do with the battery life? Did it stay functional the entire time?
Those units are really high tech. And not only do we know how many people push them a day, but we also know we get alerts when the batteries die. We get alerts when the light isn't functioning, etc. And to my knowledge, we've received a couple alerts early on the units that we installed on Broadway. But those things are getting, at a minimum, 30 hits a day, up to 70, up to 150 at the high school. Those things, they're being utilized significantly, and we can track all that, and we can produce all the data on it. One of the alerts that I believe it provides is when it's got a low battery, and we're not getting any alerts on that. And the first phase of this, of engineering one of these, is for the company to come out, and they will actually do a sun survey, and they'll tell you if it's going to be effective or not, based on the location, general vicinity of where you want to do the install.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and all the ones on Broadway passed that test, and we did some trimming on the big sycamore in front of Hot Monk, just to give it a little bit more opening, and I have heard no problems.
Have you had any feedback from those flashing lights on Spain and Andrew? I personally really like those because they're so bright, but I don't live around there, so I don't know how people are responding to them. Have you had any comments?
I haven't had much feedback, no. None positive or negative.
Just a quick question. I'm just thinking of Napa Street between 4th and 5th. There's a little bit of that bulb out, and then just quick question: is that raised right there? The cross? It's not raised. And okay, the bulb out. I know that does have some impact on as a calming measure. just your opinion, would that part where the crosswalk currently exists between Third and Presswood, would a bulb out, that would probably be a little too tight. If I mean, obviously we're not out there with a measuring tape right now, but
It could work.
okay. I'm here. I'm liking the solar sign, raised crosswalk, bulb out, just things that at minimum, I don't know if if you need direction from us, but those are the things that could be implemented relatively quickly. That I think could have a pretty quick turnaround on that intersection while exploring the stop signs and the speed tables and kind of some of these bigger things that we need to take some other things into consideration. So I'm again using Napa Street, that little, the way that's been done up. I feel like that on MacArthur Street would have a pretty good impact on pedestrian safety right there.
Yeah, and that's something that could be looked into. Bulb outs get a little bit involved. Yeah, and we started talking about moving the bulb out and putting a stop sign there, and we talked about moving the fire hydrant to accommodate. That gets real expensive. I don't think that we have any of those type of obstructions there, but that's the first thing that we're going to look at when we start talking about doing work in the intersection and putting in a 2.5 foot deep by 6 foot foundation, 2.5 diameter, is, what sort of utilities are there? Where are the gas lines, etc. Yeah, and it's just the practicality of installing those measures. As we were putting these in on Broadway, we encountered live fiber optic lines that no one had claimed or marked out. We encountered abandoned gas lines. We encountered live gas lines. We encountered our decorative streetlight conduits that we pretty much know the approximate location of where those streetlight conduits go, but not all the locations. We had to move a live fiber optic. We had to have PG&E come out and remove 2 abandoned gas lines. We had to remove 2 live electrical conduits. So it's a challenging thing. It can be done, and we can go a little bit different than the Caltrans standard over at Westwood. And so we could get away with a smaller, slimmer installation. It's just a real big thing. I think people are going to see it out there and going to be like, wow. Those things are 10 feet tall, 12 feet tall, and they're not copacetic with the display of that neighborhood. Having grown up right around the block and spent the first 23 years of my life there, but it's not there to blend into the scenery. Yeah. It's there to be like our resuscitation devices at the plaza. It's meant to stand out, it's meant to be seen, and it's meant to basically save lives and help pedestrian safety.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of keeping it above ground as much as possible so we don't run into the gas lines, fiber optics, and all that stuff. And when you're describing it doesn't blend in, it's going to stick out. To me, that sounds perfect. Is there any other comments or questions from the committee? We did. Oh, Shelby, you look like you were about to. No. Okay. Again, this is where we would ask for a motion. I guess, short of calling for a motion on something, is this something that the city can report back to us? A lot of these options. Now, obviously, you said the sign in the street is coming, which is great. But again, any of these smaller projects that we think would have an immediate impact, if the city, if the Public Works could just report back to us, because I don't have a motion at this moment. I think we just need to hear back from the city.
Yeah, and this traffic hazard reporting form was just received on 1/18/24, so it's relatively fresh. We haven't had a whole lot of time to look into it, but like I said, I think that my 2 favorite things over at 5th and Napa on the east side are the bumps that we put in to deter people turning high speed left off Napa onto 5th, and that sign in the middle of the road. I think that those are doing a good job at slowing people down, and that's something that we could pursue right away.
All right. Well, on that note, then I think we can close out this item and move on to the next agenda item. I don't have the agenda in front of me, so.
That's it.
Traffic Safety Committee members' reports and comments.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're done there. Perfect. All right. So now that the everybody's leaving. Okay. Traffic Safety Committee members' reports and comments. Anybody have any reports or any comments? No.
What was the time frame again of getting the remainder installations on Broadway for those remaining crosswalks?
The ones on Broadway are done.
They're all done.
And yeah, effectively. They're functioning. We got just a little bit of concrete work to do out there, but those are done and fully functioning
Okay.
at the 4 different crossings.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. I see Deputy Sea's still here. Did you need to report to us? No. Okay, perfect. I don't want to keep you if you gotta go set. If you gotta go set. If not, if you want to hang out, I get it. No. Sounds like
MacArthur Lane.
Yeah. I hear MacArthur Street's the hot spot.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was the committee members' reports, comments. Are there staff comments or announcements? If not,
No, I pretty much said what I had to say on all my items and just following up on one of our action items tonight of completing or setting up an ad hoc, that's in Public Works Court, and we'll take care of setting that up with the 2 committee members.
One last question. Probably you don't have an answer that's too elaborate. What can we do to move the city forward to create truck restrictions off of Broadway and West Napa, West Napa? Short of throwing our hands up in the air and going, it can't be done.
Truck restrictions is a tough one. And because I think what you would have to do in order to write a ticket to one of those trucks is follow it through to the other side of town where the truck restriction starts on the other side of town, and then determine that that truck didn't stop the entire way. And then you could write him a ticket. And then I would think that he would fight it because he would say, oh, but I thought I was going to do this and instead I did that. Or I drove right by my delivery and forgot to drop it off and I have to go back. And another thing I was wondering, is Amazon included in that? And because if Amazon is cutting through MacArthur to try to get over to 5th Street and drop off a package, and I know that people love their Amazon.
I'm looking at start small, baby steps. The reason you guys replaced that paddle on Napa Street was because the Lucky delivery truck, I saw him. He drove right over the top of it and kept going. There's one Lucky store, and it ain't in town, and we have 12 to, I would say 10 to 12 wheeler FedEx trucks. They're massive trucks. It's not the Amazon trucks. It's not the panel trucks. Those guys, everybody does want their delivery. I get that. This is Old Dominion. This is all these, and these are tractor trailers that are wheeling through. It's the little that I've looked into it, but I did look into it. It's the restrictions can be a mile, less than a mile. So from 8th Street East to 1st Street East on Napa meets that restriction. It's just a little further. 5th Street East, there ain't no stores delivering there, and so I've seen trucks literally, in matter of fact, coming off of, is that Indiana, turning right onto 5th Street East, took out a power pole. All the magnolias, not all, a couple of magnolias were, the limbs were ripped off by an 18-wheeler. It's, to me, start with the 18-wheelers, start with the 12-wheelers, and create some restriction there that, because when they, even if they're doing 25, that just feels big. You know, it's, again, it's back to that what is perceived. And then the whole other side of the coin that I see a lot on Napa Street, tower tours, all those guys, they go wheeling down. They're either taking people into Sebastiani, and I get that. But these are buses, you know, tour buses are eliminated from many places in San Francisco. And I'm not saying we don't want them, because I'm sure the people in the plaza want them to be there. Just get them to use Broadway.
I hear what you're saying, and maybe this is another good thing for the ad hoc to take up, because the chief of police will be there. And to me, it's an enforcement issue and bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Well, and then what Chief Cutting has said is, you know, before he was even here, might have been a couple of chiefs even before, was the ordinance as it's written now is unenforceable, because even the F-350s, or, you know, the big trucks and the panel vans and so on, are excluded. I talked to Bob Lawn, I don't even know if he's still in town anymore, but you know, he said he actually created an ordinance one time and forwarded it somewhere within the city, and you know, it died a quiet death, presumably. It's been going on. It's just, I thought for a long time I was the only one, and this chap on MacArthur Street said no.
yeah, and I think it's on Spain Street's traffic hazard reporting
Yeah,
form also.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's a tough one. And here again, I mean, I would defer to the chief and see if there's any creative thinking that he can bestow on us.
As somebody who's on that ad hoc, I'll talk to the chief about that and see if I can't report back. You know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Berger, but the law already exists for no commercial vehicles over 40 feet in portions of the areas we're talking about, correct?
Yeah, well, I see the signs, and I haven't studied the law, but I see the signs that say commercial vehicles, there's limitations. I'm not sure if it says prohibited, but I see the limitations on there. And I think what they're trying to do is basically keep them out of the heart of downtown if they're using that as a throughway and not a delivery.
Yeah, I believe, and I don't remember exactly if it's, you know, they're supposed to go Napa Road down to Arnold, and if they have to make their way through the valley. But it might be something that we can, you know, whether it be the ad hoc committee or someone from the committee, work with the chief and maybe a representative from CHP to kind of work on that commercial through traffic, you know, just to see if the CHP commercial guys are usually pretty good about getting on the truckers and whatnot for that. So maybe that's something we could work in you know, collaboration with them.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'm not sure how much they're going to work outside of state right-of-way. I have worked with them with in-state right-of-way with the CHPs that drive the pickups that park at the scales, and had pretty good luck enforcing this type of thing in city limits on state right-of-way in Napa. But having them off of Highway 12, I'm not sure how much jurisdiction they're going to work out there.
Okay. Yeah, I know I've had conversations a little bit in the past with a couple of the CHP officers, you know, regarding some of this stuff, just as far as where the commercial traffic's supposed to be going. And, you know, some of that is outside the city limits in the county, but CHP jurisdiction as far as traffic enforcement. So
yeah, and if it's a commercial
discussion.
vehicle thing, then that falls under their umbrella also.
Correct.
So that could open up things a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
like you said, something to look into and talk about with the chief.
Yes, sir.
Great.
On that note, meeting adjourned.
And out the gate.
And out the
There you go.